Hello, Majesties! Today, Bubble Rabbit is going to read Magic House Factor World War II Super Edition Readers Not to Tell. Bunny. Bubble Bunny! Do you think it's good enough? What do you think? Burble Bunny. If my if my phone is now, it shows brightly more than that. That's fine. So chapter 4, the home front. As soldiers prepared to go to war, people all at home got ready as well. Their biggest job was to be sure there were enough weapons, equipment, and food for the millions of soldiers overseas. To remind people that the soldiers came first, the U.S. government made posters that said things like, "Do with less so they'll have enough." Soldiers were depending on people at home for help. Bubble Bunny. People pitched in to aid the war effort. There were drives all over the country to collect and recycle scrap metals. Burpee. But you got into my video. It took 200 tons of metal just to make one large warship. People, including school kids and community-like organizations, turned piles of tin cans, rubber tires, scrap metal from cars, silk, cloth, bottle, paper, and more. All these things were made into useful materials for soldiers. Ration books. It was dangerous for the ships to bring certain foods like sugar to the United States. And much of the food produced in America had to go to the soldiers, so there were food shortages. Family has war ration books with food stamps in them. They used stamps to buy food, gas, and clothes. If they ran out of stamps for things like meat or butter, they had to think of something else for dinner. Victory Gardens. Because vegetables are in short supply, the government urged people to grow their own. Many people turned their backyards into vegetable patches. Because the gardens were helping the war effort, people called them victory gardens. There were 20 million of them. Women go to work. Factories ran 9 days making weapons and armed military weapons equipment. Women had been allowed to work in factories before did jobs men had always done. These women are riveting airplane parts. Rivets were pins of whole pieces of metal together. They built airplanes. They also trained as pilots so they could deliver planes from one part of the country to another. Women held jobs as welders, electricians, and riveters. They sewed uniforms, repaired machinery, and drove trucks. And when working, many had to raise their children alone since their husbands were in war. Posters urging people to work were all over public spaces. Rosie the riveter was charged from government campaigns. We can do it. The more women at work, the sooner we win. Women are needed also as blah 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 blah. Here local US civil service. Women in the military. There was no draft for women and they weren't allowed to fight. However, almost 400,000 volunteered to serve in the military. Women soldiers repaired vehicles and weapons. To free up male soldiers to fight, those who worked in war offices and drivers or male clerks. Many faced danger, especially nurses who worked in hospitals near the fighting. Army nurses also served on ships on planes carrying wounded soldiers to safety. 201 nurses died in the war, some by enemy fire and others by accident or illness. Japanese internment camps. All the people who were united in the war effort. The unfair thing was happening to Japanese Americans. Even though they were loyal Americans and many were fighting in the war, the government was afraid that some of them might support Japan or act as spies. As President Roosevelt signed an order saying that Japanese Americans should be placed in internment camps. Bubble Bunny! In March 1942, 122,000 Japanese Americans from California, Oregon, and Washington had to leave their homes and business. They were ordered to report one of 10 internment camps around the country. The camp has barbed wire fences around them. They were not allowed to come and go as they pleased. They lived in small rooms in barracks and lined up to use the bathroom and get their meals. In spite of the hardships, Japanese Americans tried to keep their lives as normal as possible. Children went to school and adults worked as teachers, doctors, and farm workers. It wasn't until 1945 that they were allowed to return to the homes they left almost 3 years before. In 1988, Congress passed a law that said the camps were wrong. The U.S. government paid each person who had been one try to help make for the unfairness. British kids during the Blitz. Life was scary for British kids living in a city during the Blitz. The houses and schools could be bombed. They spent many nights with air raid shelters with strangers, and they risked their lives every day. To keep the kids safe, the government sent thousands of them to live with strangers in the countryside. They had to pack their clothes in gas masks to survive a possible gas attack. Then they said goodbye to their parents and friends. Some kids spent the whole war living far away from home. 5. Code spies and the resistance. Have you ever written anything in code? Writing code is a way to give secret information to someone. In time of the war, military leaders often sent code messages. George Washington used spies and sent code messages during the Revolutionary War. The Axis and Allies also had codes, but theirs were very hard to figure out. When people write in code, they use numbers, letters, names, and special symbols that stands for words. The person getting the code message knows that what things mean, but other people don't. They have to try to break the code. The men and women who were code breakers in World War II were the kind of people who liked math, chess, and languages. Little groups of them worked together in England and the United States. The Allies decoded important messages that helped them plan the D-Day invasion. Enigma code. The Germans used a code called the Enigma code, created by the Enigma machine. Number 1, the Allies captured a German U-boat that had the Enigma machine on board. The machine helped a group of top British code breakers solve the code. Alan Turing was a math genius who was a language responsible for cracking the Enigma code. Sending the code. The codes were often sent military teleports by radio signals or radio programs. Another way to send codes was by war pigeons. Specially trained pigeons carried code messages. Britain used about 250,000 of them. The pigeons had a small tube with the message attached to one leg. They had also pouches that fit over the packs. Pigeons handlers trained war pigeons to return to the nest. These nests were often near military bases. Pilots could take the birds with them when they flew near enemy lines. They dropped them down to earth with little parachutes. People lined behind the lines got pigeons and attached messages to them about enemy movements. Then they would release the birds so they could fly back to the base in Britain. Navajo code talkers. Not many people although know the Navajo language. The Marines chose 100 Navajo men to be code talkers. They had to be able to speak both English and Navajo. It was their mission to send coded messages to each other using the Navajo language. Navajo language wasn't well known. The Japanese were never able to break the code. Code talkers often use Navajo words to stand in the English words. For example, Navajo word for turtle means tanks, and potatoes mean grenades and whales or battleship. Iwo Jima was a small island in the Pacific. During World War II, it had 2 important Japanese airfields on it. Enemy planes based on the island often attacked U.S. planes on the way to Japan. Americans captured the island and used it for their airplanes. During battle of Iwo Jima, 6 code talkers sent overhead messages in the first 2 days of the battle. Their work helped American soldiers capture this island. The resistance. Wait a minute. Okay. All over Europe, men and women risked their lives working on the alleys behind enemy lines. These brave people felt it was important to stand up for what was right in spite of the danger. This underground movement was the resistance. Many members of the resistance worked as spies. They also sabotaged access bridges, railroads, telephone lines, and other things needed for the German war effort. The resistance worked in secret to hide Allied airmen who had been shot down behind enemy lines. Spies also landed on the beaches in Japan. Some put rubber feet over their shoes. They looked like bare feet, so they generally didn't think the prints were from fishermen. The SOE. Early in the war, Winston Churchill created a secret organization called Special Operations Executive. The SOE trained people to work as resistance fighters. They learned code and how to use explosives. The SOE were almost all countries occupied by the Axis. Some brave men and women of the SOE parachuted behind enemy lines. The war helped keep the Axis from winning the war. The White Mouse. Nancy Wake was one of the most famous SOE agents. Because he was so hard to catch, Nancy's nickname was the White Mouse. Nancy was from New Zealand. She worked as a journalist in France and married a wealthy Frenchman. When the Nazis invaded France, she carried a message for the French resistance. When someone told her the Nazis about her, Nancy had to escape from France. After 6 tries, she finally got to Spain by hitting in the back of the coal truck. Nancy went to Britain and went there to join the SOE. Life in the SOE. In 1944, Nancy made parachute to France. She made it safely even though her parachute got tangled in a tree. Nancy organized 7,500 people to work alone or small groups to destroy factories, railroads, and bridges. This made it hard for Germans to get supplies when they needed them. Shortly before D-Day, Nancy rode her bike 250 miles to German lines to contact the Allies. This trip took 72 hours. Nancy once led a raid on the Nazi headquarters in Montauban, France. So they killed 38 Nazis. She and her people ambushed German trucks and supplied weapons to the resistance fighters who parachuted into France. In the war, Britain and the United States awarded medals to Nancy for her heroism. France gave her its highest military award, the Legion of Honor. Nancy lived to be 98 years old. She once said, "I was never afraid. I was too busy to be afraid." Things you need. If you go in SOE, you might need a pencil with a dagger in it. Sugar of hidden blades. A camera that is in a matchbox. A radio that fits in a cookie tin. Spike to capture tires. Compass that look like a button or piece of jewelry. So this is the end of the video today. Please like. Bye, see you next time.